we have one final closing keynote for the day, Dr. Margaret Leinen. Dr. Leinen is an oceanographer and the director of the Scripps Institute of Oceanography. She's also the Vice Chancellor for Marine Sciences and the Dean of the School of Marine Sciences at the University of California at San Diego. She served for 7 years at the National Science Foundation as the Assistant Director for Geosciences, overseeing government-wide planning through climate research and through the U.S. Global Change Research Program. Dr. Leinen is also Board Director for the Global Council for Science and the Environment. Thank you, Dr. Leinen.
Thank you, Erica. And thank you to GCSE for a fantastic 3 days. I was asked to put together some thoughts that might summarize the 3 days, and I don't know that that's really something that can be done in 10 minutes. It was a very broad discussion, and I really enjoyed the thoughtful approach to exploring the challenges that we have and to thinking about how science itself has changed, not just in this last couple of years with the pandemic, but whether it's changing fast enough to give us what we need to address the challenges in front of us. So congratulations to GCSE in organizing the meeting and pulling together a fantastic group of speakers. I think that a key takeaway from the last 3 days has been a call for the environmental science community to really focus on solutions and to be more active in mechanisms to generate solutions. And I think that we've seen universities really evolve their thinking about environmental science over the last 20 years or so, from one that was largely focused, not entirely, individuals have worked on solutions for a long time, but the university as a whole were really focused on exploration of issues and then deep dives into processes that we felt were important for the response of the environment to anthropogenic change, the response of various parts of the environment to the rest of the environment changing. And I think that at that time, 20 years ago, the university science community really looked to policymakers as the agent of change here, that policy was going to be that top-down solution. We were going to have a global agreement on emissions. We were going to establish policies that would help us move forward towards sustainability. And the universities were engaged in setting up centers for policy and science. And we just saw a flowering of the exploration of that intersect between what policy could do and what science could do. But I think that one of the things that we've seen emphasized over the last 3 days is that the impacts of anthropogenic change, whether that's climate change or pollution or other anthropogenic stressors, are extremely complex, and that we're looking at and that the anthropogenic stresses themselves are very complex. So we have a really complex set of drivers that are leading us to those, and we have a complex set of environmental responses. And that they play out very differently at the local level than they do at the regional level, at the national level, or the global level. And in some respects, COVID was a great model for that, seeing the way that science approached that, first at the level of understanding the virus itself, then looking at sort of rapidly innovating to look at various ways of addressing the problem. And then we're now in the stage where we're looking at the social science of how people are responding to the availability of the vaccine, and how nations are responding to either having the resources or not having the resources to acquire vaccine broadly. And that's very similar to what we're seeing with the problems of anthropogenic change. So we've heard over the last 3 days that we need to move to be able to act quickly on a variety of solutions. And I think that one of the things to emphasize with this is that it's not like the science community has a big bag of solutions and that we're going to just move immediately into applied science of saying, okay, we know exactly what to do, and here's how to apply it in California where I live, or in Paris where some of our panelists live, or in Maryland, or in Ohio for Ohio State. We're really talking about needing to generate the understanding of how to transition from that basic understanding to the solutions that are necessary. In medicine, they call it translational medicine. I think I refer to it as solution science or solution motivated science. It's really, in many cases, still very basic research, but directed at solving these problems. Within universities, young faculty and students are extremely excited about this, and they're extremely committed to being able to do this kind of science. And I think that the need for solutions at the global scale is important, but the need for solutions of the adaptation and the dealing with the impacts of change play out locally. And in many respects, that's where we're seeing the most action. And that's where the biggest need for some of the science is. So we now see universities establishing centers and institutes and collaboratories and so forth that are focused on being able to activate that solution science. So bringing stakeholders together with scientists in order to understand what science is necessary at what level, and to be able to generate that. And that's quite a change for universities. You know, we change slowly. And I think the fact that we're doing this over a period of 5 to 10 years is really amazing in terms of the culture of sciences and universities. Olivier, just an hour ago or so, gave us some great examples of ways to achieve that interdisciplinary intersection within research institutions within universities. So I think there are a couple of other challenges that implies for us that go beyond creating centers where people can get together. And that has to do with the way that we reward scientists and the way that science is done. And one of our critical challenges is being able to generate the kinds of publication venues where this can be discussed. Because if we in Southern California develop ways to adapt to sea level rise, which we're doing, we certainly want to convey those to other communities around the world that have similar geographies, similar oceanographies, and where storm systems are similar. And we don't have a lot of scientific literature that is focused on being able to convey scholarly information about solutions in this way. And we're going to need to, there's certainly some journals that do this, but we're going to need to think about how we do that so that the work in one area can inform work everywhere. I think that's also important because publications are one of the ways that scientists demonstrate to their universities that they have done something that is meaningful. It's only one metric, but it's an important one. And that brings me to a second way that I think universities are going to have to continue to innovate. And that's in how we evaluate faculty and how we reward faculty. So as we think about faculty promotion and their reward system, in most universities, that's based on what were the scientific values and the scientific achievements of the last century, not this century. So how do we reward scientists who are also faculty members and are involving their students in this work when they are working with stakeholders and the product is something for a community? We don't have a lot of ways of assigning value to that in universities. And I think we're going to have to do a better job of that because the science itself is changing, the motivation for it is changing, and we're going to have to change as well. So I think that those are some of the challenges that are ahead of us. So we have lots of work to do. We've heard a lot about that over the last 3 days. We've heard an emphasis on partnerships between universities and stakeholders to achieve consensus about the science that's needed. We've heard an emphasis on partnerships between universities and the private sector to innovate together and to innovate more quickly and transfer knowledge more quickly. We've heard about the need for making data more readily available and easier to use for the private sector and for communities. That's another huge challenge that's ahead of us. And this brings us back to GCSE. I think that GCSE has, in its previous incarnation as the National Council for Science of the Environment, has done an outstanding job of connecting scientists with stakeholders. When we went to NCSE meetings and the meetings had as many stakeholders as scientists, that was unusual for our community. But it was really an achievement and a very purposeful one on the part of NCSE, and is going to be one on the part of GCSE as well. Finding ways to bring scientists together with stakeholders. And you've heard Michelle and others talk about communities of practice as one of the mechanisms. And those, as Olivier pointed out, those can have many forms. And I look forward to GCSE exploring how to do that and the many forms that it can develop itself, but also how it can spur innovation within our universities to take on these challenges, to construct for ourselves structures that work and construct in our communities structures that work. So I look forward to continuing this dialogue. We have a lot of work to do to provide the solutions that are necessary for the impacts of anthropogenic change. And I think GCSE has just demonstrated with this fascinating conference that it's up to the challenge and that intends to work with all of us as a facilitator, as a convener, and as an innovator. Thank you so much, and thank you, Michelle, and all the rest of GCSE for a very stimulating 3 days and for the work you're going to be doing in the future.